Anthropic leapfrogs OpenAI. To become the most valuable AI company in history at a near trillion-dollar valuation, Amazon is forced to shut down its internal developer leaderboard after workers game the algorithms to run up catastrophic cloud bills, and progressive lawmakers call for an immediate moratorium on AI data centers. Welcome to today's Daily Rundown. I am your host, Anna. This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Newman, senior software engineer from Université Laval, based in Calgary, Alberta. Today, we perform a forensic autopsy on massive valuation flips and structural resistance this Friday, May 29, 2026. The financial hierarchy of Silicon Valley has been completely upended. Anthropic has successfully overtaken OpenAI, closing a historic $65 billion funding round that brings its valuation to a staggering $965 billion. This capital surge is backed by a massive revenue run rate of $47 billion and the immediate release of Claude Opus 4.8, which is outperforming rivals on key engineering and financial benchmarks. But as capital floods the frontier, corporate infrastructure is fracturing under the weight of reckless optimization. Amazon has been forced to dismantle its internal developer platform after software engineers gamed the metrics, pointing autonomous agents at pointless tasks to boost their scores and blowing through corporate budgets. This comes as an internal tech consultant reveals an enterprise client accidentally spent nearly $500 million in a single month by failing to set hard usage limits on employee AI licenses. Before we dive into the data, I have a brief strategic request. The algorithms governing the app you are listening on right now dictate what intelligence reaches your feed. To ensure you never miss our most critical forensic autopsies, please hit follow or subscribe to the DJAMGAMIND channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. It takes just 1 second, but it is the most effective way to help us scale this independent research. Let's unravel the day.
Before we begin today's briefing, a note for the brands listening. If you want to reach the true architects of the AI revolution, the technical leaders actually building the stack, not just the tourists, DJAMGAMIND offers select premium partnership opportunities. Let us position your product directly in front of the ultimate technical buyer. Visit jamgamind.com/partners.
When a massive earthquake hits, the destruction on the surface is really just a symptom.
Right, exactly.
Like, if you really want to understand what happened, you have to look deep underground. You have to find the fault lines.
The places where those two massive tectonic plates have just been grinding against each other.
Yeah, building up all this invisible pressure for years until, suddenly something snaps.
And you map that by looking at the bedrock. You look for the structural friction points that were mathematically guaranteed to cause a rupture long before the first window shattered.
Right. And that is exactly our mission today. We are basically acting as forensic venture strategists and digital rights advocates.
Yes, to look at the bedrock of the tech industry.
Exactly. Taking a stack of sources for today, May 29th, 2026, and analyzing them not just as isolated headlines,
but as a holistic autopsy of a massive financial and structural inflection point.
And our stack of sources today is incredibly diverse. We are parsing through financial roundups from Silicon Valley, leaked user interface blueprints out of Cupertino.
Don't forget the environmental congressional reports from Capitol Hill.
Oh, yeah. And the aerospace failure logs from Cape Canaveral.
They seem totally disconnected on the surface, right?
Yeah.
But they all map to the exact same tectonic fault line.
Yeah.
Our thesis for this deep dive is that we are witnessing an unprecedented, historic centralization of capital in the artificial intelligence sector.
Right.
But this centralization is simultaneously breaking internal corporate governance across the Fortune 500, and it's crashing headfirst into brutal physical and political realities.
So we are calling this the trillion-dollar valuation flips and the sovereign pushback.
Because the virtual world is fundamentally running out of physical road.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we get into the structural breakdowns or, the political moratoriums and the literal rocket explosion.
Which are wild, by the way.
Seriously wild. But we need to establish the sheer scale of the capital that is driving this frenzy. Because the numbers we're dealing with right now, they're entirely decoupling from traditional tech valuations.
Oh, completely.
Like Anthropic just closed a $65 billion Series H funding round.
$65 billion in a single round.
It's just absurd. That pushes their total valuation to $965 billion.
Right.
Which officially eclipses OpenAI's $852 billion mark that they set back in late March.
So they are practically knocking on the door of a $1 trillion valuation for an AI startup.
Yeah, and that valuation is being fueled by a staggering $47 billion annual recurring revenue run rate.
And just to contextualize that, $47 billion in ARR, or annual recurring revenue.
Right.
I mean, there are legacy tech giants out there.
Companies that have been building hardware for 4 decades.
Exactly. And they do not see that kind of reliable recurring cash flow. And Anthropic's run rate has climbed from $30 billion just earlier this year. The velocity of that capital accumulation is entirely unprecedented in the history of venture economics. It represents a total market consolidation.
Okay, I have to put on my forensic strategist hat here, though, and challenge the premise of those numbers.
Go for it.
Because it feels like we are valuing a pharmaceutical company at $1 trillion, not for the life-saving drugs they've successfully brought to market, but for the theoretical lab equipment they just purchased.
That's a good analogy, yeah.
Like, is a nearly $1 trillion valuation actually justified by the underlying technology? Or are we just looking at a speculative arms race where VCs are terrified of missing out on the next computing paradigm? It feels like valuing a car company before we've built the roads.
Well, what's fascinating here is the clinical reality that this valuation actually maps to a very specific, highly lucrative strategy, one that is dominating the enterprise market right now.
Okay.
This massive leap in Anthropic's revenue is driven directly by Claude Code and the launch of Claude Opus 4.8.
Right, the new model.
Yeah, and it proves that Anthropic's foundational safety-first architecture is finally paying off commercially. I mean, several years ago, Sam Altman famously dismissed Anthropic's cautious approach as fear-based marketing.
I remember that, yeah.
But in the enterprise sector, where Fortune 500 companies are deploying these models to handle sensitive financial records or, proprietary source code and healthcare compliance data.
Trust is the ultimate currency.
Exactly.
And that mathematical safety net is why a global bank actually feels comfortable handing over client portfolios to an automated system.
Precisely. Opus 4.8 mathematically reduces risk through its architecture. It doesn't just have some filter slapped on at the end of its processing.
Right.
It uses an internalized red teaming loop. So before it outputs a complex string of code to a developer, a secondary neural pathway within the model actually critiques the generated code for vulnerabilities.
Oh, wow. So it basically argues with itself.
That's exactly. Running adversarial attacks internally until it reaches a secure consensus. Anthropic states this mechanism makes it 4 times less likely than the previous 4.7 model to let flaws in its own generated code slip through.
And it is demonstrating significantly lower rates of misaligned behavior during agentic work, too.
Yes, very important distinction.
And just for you listening, when we say agentic work, we aren't just talking about a chatbot answering a question for you.
No, not at all.
We are talking about an AI system being given a high-level goal, autonomously creating a multi-step plan, and then literally operating software tools, databases, and web browsers to execute that plan without human intervention.
And Opus 4.8 is designed to flag uncertainties and actually pause for human authorization, instead of just confidently making unverified claims.
And which enterprises love.
They do. And at the exact same time as performing these internal safety checks, it is outperforming GPT 5.5 and Gemini 3.1 Pro on agentic coding benchmarks.
Wow.
And financial analysis, and even the humanities last exam benchmark.
Which is currently the most punishing gauntlet of PhD-level reasoning tests we have to measure pure cognitive capability.
Right. So they have built an engine that runs faster than the competition, but also possesses an unbreakable braking system. That is why the enterprise capital is flooding their way.
But that flood of enterprise capital brings us to our first massive structural fracture.
Let's hear it.
Because that $47 billion in annual recurring revenue for Anthropic, it doesn't just materialize out of thin air.
No, it does not.
It is coming directly out of the operating budgets of these massive enterprise corporations. And that is sparking a severe internal governance crisis that our sources are tracking across the corporate landscape right now.
Yeah, because when capital and technological integration move at this velocity, corporate oversight mechanisms basically always fail to keep up.
And we are seeing the exact cost of that failure in real time. Like, there's a new report from Axios detailing an enterprise client. This is an incident revealed by an AI deployment consultant where the company accidentally spent nearly $500 million in a single month on cloud compute.
$500 million.
Vanished in roughly 30 days.
That is staggering.
And the mechanism behind the failure was painfully simple. Corporate IT just simply failed to set Claude license usage limits or API budget caps for their employees.
Just a completely unconstrained deployment environment.
Yeah. But the bleeding isn't just coming from accidental spending. The internal metrics companies use to measure employee productivity are fundamentally broken.
Oh, this is the Amazon story.
Yes. Look at the data from Amazon. They just had to completely scrap their internal QRank dashboard.
Right.
This was a platform designed to rank software developers based on their AI utilization and output. Management wanted to ensure their teams were leveraging these expensive new tools.
So what happened?
So developers looked at the incentive structure and they basically just gamed the leaderboard.
Because of course they did. They adapted their behavior to the metric rather than the goal of the metric.
Exactly. They started writing simple Python scripts that essentially ordered their AI agents to run on endless, pointless loops.
Just burning compute.
Yeah. An agent would be instructed to repeatedly rewrite the exact same lines of background code or, summarize thousands of internal documents that literally no one was ever going to read, generating thousands of API calls per hour while a developer just went out to lunch.
Incredible.
So their internal QRank scores skyrocketed, making them look like 10x engineers to their managers while simultaneously running up astronomical cloud computing bills. It's like leaving a digital fire hydrant running just to prove to your boss you know how to use a wrench.
Yes.
But the water costs millions of dollars a minute.
That is a perfect analogy. Clinically, we track this behavior under the term token maxing.
Right.
It is a textbook, real-world manifestation of Goodhart's law.
Which is?
Goodhart's law states that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Amazon wanted to measure true engineering productivity by tracking AI usage. So raw AI usage became the target.
Right.
And that completely divorced the action from actual software improvement or return on investment. I mean, Senior Vice President Dave Treadwell actually had to send a company-wide memo explicitly telling staff, please don't use AI just for the sake of using AI.
Having to send a memo begging your engineers to stop burning money is a wild indicator of internal chaos, especially at a company planning roughly $200 billion in 2026 infrastructure spending.
Absolutely. And it highlights a deep systemic inefficiency in how human labor is integrating with these tools.
Okay, how so?
Well, if we look at the new Cursor Developer Habits report, we can see how brutally concentrated this efficiency really is. Across the board, sure, raw output has more than doubled in the last 18 months, going from 3.6 thousand to 8.6 thousand lines of code per week per developer.
Which sounds great on paper.
Right, but the gains are not distributed equally. The top 1% of developers are producing 46 times more code than the median active user.
Wait, 46 times more? Producing 46 times more code isn't just a marginal productivity boost. That represents a completely new class of human-computer collaboration.
Exactly.
It means the vast majority of developers are either struggling to prompt the models effectively or they are just token maxing to hit arbitrary KPIs.
And the financial reckoning for this behavior is imminent. The cost per agent request varies wildly, sometimes scaling up to 9 times higher across different models, with Opus 4.7 and 4.8 being heavily expensive for complex reasoning tasks.
Right, so what happens next?
What we're going to see in the upcoming Q2 2026 earnings reports are incredibly hostile questions from Wall Street financial analysts.
Oh, for sure.
They are going to look at these massive spikes in operational expenditure, the $500 million accidental overruns, the token maxing loops, and they're going to demand to see the actual tangible return on investment.
The honeymoon phase of simply buying massive amounts of compute just to signal to shareholders that you are an AI-first company is officially over.
It is dead.
And, those pointless agent loops running up the cloud bills, they carry a physical cost, too.
Yes, they do.
Every time a developer leaves that digital fire hydrant running with a Python script, physical server racks in a data center heat up. The GPUs max out their thermal limits, industrial cooling systems kick into overdrive, and municipal power grids take a massive hit.
Yep.
Which brings us to the second tectonic fault line, the migration of this friction from the corporate boardroom directly into the halls of Congress.
Because the physical footprint of this virtual expansion has crossed a threshold where it can no longer be ignored by local municipalities or federal regulators.
Exactly. Here's where it gets really interesting. The data center issue brings us to a severe operational bottleneck. We are seeing a highly organized pushback from progressive Democrats.
Very organized, yeah.
And to be perfectly clear to you listening, as forensic strategists, our job here is not to take a political side or to endorse any specific piece of legislation.
Of course not.
We are analyzing this strictly as a massive structural friction point that is going to dictate the operational landscape for the tech industry.
It is a critical, unavoidable variable in any venture deployment strategy moving forward.
Right. So at the center of this legislative resistance is Senator Bernie Sanders, who has taken a hardline stance against the physical expansion of AI infrastructure.
What's his proposal?
He is calling for a complete, outright federal moratorium on all new data center construction.
A total halt.
Yes. And alongside that moratorium, he has introduced the Abolish Super PACs Act, which specifically targets the massive influx of AI-linked venture capital entering the political money stream, basically attempting to decouple this newly minted tech wealth from the legislative process.
That's a huge move.
But the most visceral data point in our congressional sources actually comes from Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Right, the EPA hearing.
Yes, during a recent oversight hearing with the Environmental Protection Agency, an exchange went completely viral. She literally held up jars of brown, heavily polluted water.
It's a very potent, undeniable visual mechanism.
Yeah.
Really focuses public attention on the invisible infrastructure of the cloud.
Exactly. And she stated for the congressional record that the water came from Morgan County, Georgia, and explicitly attributed the pollution and the severe aquifer depletion to a recently built Meta data center in the area.
Wow.
She is demanding immediate federal investigations into how the thermal dynamics of these facilities are impacting municipal water quality.
And the mechanics of this are vital to understand.
Yeah, break that down for us.
When a data center processes millions of Opus 4.8 agentic queries, the high-density server racks generate immense heat. To prevent the hardware from literally melting, these facilities utilize massive evaporative cooling systems.
Right.
And they draw millions of gallons of water from local municipal aquifers, often discharging water back into the environment that has concentrated mineral content or completely altered thermal profiles.
So it's not just electricity, it's water.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the contrast we are analyzing here is the foundational business model of Silicon Valley colliding with the uncompromising reality of civil infrastructure.
Yeah.
Software engineers are trained in environments like CI/CD pipelines, continuous integration, and continuous deployment. They are taught to build systems that scale infinitely with near zero marginal cost.
Right, because a line of code is infinitely replicable.
But municipal water tables are not. Local electrical grids are not. This political pushback is the friction of infinite virtual ambition grinding against finite zero-sum physical resources.
Well said.
And even within this progressive resistance bloc, we are tracking divergent strategic approaches.
Right, because not every lawmaker is calling for a full construction ban.
Exactly.
Yep.
Contrast Senator Sanders' call for a complete moratorium with the approach of Representative Ro Khanna from California, who, importantly, represents districts deep within Silicon Valley.
Oh, that is an important detail.
Khanna characterizes these massive data centers as largely extractive to local working-class communities, pulling resources out without putting localized economic value back in.
Right.
But he purposefully stops short of calling for a construction ban. Instead, he has proposed a Work for America program.
What does that look like?
This legislation aims to hire 1 million Americans for public works and specialized tech infrastructure training. It's designed as a mitigation strategy, a way to offset the economic displacement caused by AI automation and infrastructure strain, rather than a full kinetic halt on the building itself.
Got it.
But regardless of the specific legislative approach that passes, the pressure on the physical layer of the AI ecosystem is mounting exponentially.
And that physical friction isn't just a political problem for local governments in Georgia. It is actively dictating the actual product roadmaps of companies like Apple and Blue Origin.
Oh, absolutely.
Our sources provide a striking contrast here between companies that are pivoting entirely into the software routing layer and companies that are slamming into the kinetic, unforgiving reality of hardware.
The divergence between the digital abstraction and the physical constraints is just widening by the day.
So let's look at the software abstraction first. We have a massive leak from Bloomberg regarding Apple's internal strategy.
Right.
For years, the narrative has been that Apple is severely lagging behind OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google in foundational model training. But Apple is taking the path of least resistance to scale AI to their million-plus iPhone users.
Which makes sense for them.
Yeah, the leak reveals that for the core iOS 27 Siri update, Apple has fundamentally outsourced the heavy cognitive lifting to Google Gemini's model infrastructure.
So they are completely overhauling the on-device user experience without bearing the infrastructural cost of training the underlying intelligence.
Exactly. Siri is going to live entirely inside the dynamic island, that interactive, pill-shaped cutout at the top of the iPhone screen. You swipe down, and it runs a localized AI search using your on-device personal data and the web. But what's brilliant from a pure software scaling perspective is their user interface choices. They're integrating Perplexity-style rich cards directly into the interface.
Oh, nice.
So instead of just giving you a text answer, it generates interactive data widgets like livestock charts or playable media modules.
Very Apple.
And if you swipe down further, it opens a dedicated ChatGPT-style interface that routes your complex queries out to external AI models. Apple didn't try to spend $50 billion to build the massive data centers from scratch to compete. They just built the most elegant software routing layer on Earth, sitting entirely on top of everyone else's physical compute overhead.
It's a highly capital-efficient software play that leverages their monopoly on consumer distribution.
Right. But now, contrast that software elegance with the kinetic reality of what happened at Cape Canaveral on Thursday evening.
Yeah, the Blue Origin incident.
Jeff Bezos' aerospace company, Blue Origin, was preparing for the fourth launch of its New Glenn rocket. This is a massive, heavy-lift orbital spacecraft designed to directly compete with SpaceX's Falcon Heavy and carry Amazon's Kuiper internet satellites into orbit.
Right.
During a routine static fire test on the launch pad, where they ignite the engines while keeping the rocket clamped down, the vehicle suffered a catastrophic failure and exploded in a massive fireball.
Just a total loss.
Yeah. The explosion caused extreme structural damage to their only functional, custom-built launch pad. No one was hurt, thankfully, but it is a massive, devastating setback for an aerospace program they have spent over a decade building.
Incredibly brutal reminder of the immutable laws of physics.
Yeah. But if Apple wins by just outsourcing to Gemini, doesn't that just pass the buck? I have to challenge this software-first mindset. Like, we see Apple easily integrating AI via software, while Blue Origin suffers a decade-derailing explosion. Does this prove that in 2026, investing in physical hardware is a fool's errand compared to the software boom?
Well, this raises an important question. And it's the central paradox of this entire global tech ecosystem.
Okay.
It is incredibly tempting for venture strategists to look at Apple's frictionless software pivot and Blue Origin's smoking launchpad and conclude that software is the only rational investment. I mean, Elon Musk himself responded to the Blue Origin explosion with a tweet simply saying, "Most unfortunate, rockets are hard."
Classic Musk.
Right. But the clinical reality is that software iteration cycles are fundamentally different from hardware iteration cycles. Anthropic can train an AI model, run millions of automated synthetic tests, identify a logic flaw, and push a patch in a matter of hours.
Sure.
If a software agent fails, it throws a localized error code on a developer's screen. If a heavy-lift rocket fails, it vaporizes a billion-dollar launch pad.
Very true.
Blue Origin has had only one successful flight out of 3 attempts for the New Glenn architecture. Hardware is brutally unforgiving, highly capital-intensive, and agonizingly slow to iterate.
Which makes Apple's strategy of outsourcing that pain seem brilliant until the music stops.
Exactly, and your synthesis regarding Apple's inherited risk is exactly the point. Apple outsourcing Siri to Google Gemini leaves Apple entirely dependent on Google's physical infrastructure footprint.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It ties their flagship consumer product directly to the data centers that are currently drawing the legislative ire of progressive lawmakers.
Yeah.
You cannot execute a single line of Claude Opus 4.8 code, you cannot run a token maxing loop in Python, and you cannot route a single Gemini query through an iPhone dynamic island without burning physical energy in a concrete building somewhere on Earth.
Right.
Software may scale infinitely in theory, but in reality it is anchored with absolute certainty to the kinetic world, the exact same kinetic world that blows up rockets.
So what does this all mean for you listening? It means the illusion of the cloud is finally evaporating. We have spent decades treating technology as this invisible, weightless, infinite resource.
And it's just not.
No. But whether your company is rolling out an AI leaderboard that might accidentally waste millions in cloud compute, or your local town council is fighting over data center water usage, or you are just swiping down on your iPhone's new Gemini-powered Siri, this collision of massive capital and physical limits affects your daily life.
Absolutely.
The virtual and the physical are no longer separate operational domains.
They are entirely inextricably locked together, which leaves us with a final, rather provocative economic puzzle for you to mull over.
I like puzzles. Let's hear it.
We discuss Goodhart's Law, regarding broken metrics earlier, but there is another foundational economic principle at play here called the Jevons paradox.
The Jevons paradox.
Yes. The Jevons paradox states that when a technological advancement makes a resource more efficient to use, we do not end up using less of that resource. We end up using exponentially more of it because the barrier to entry drops and new use cases proliferate.
Oh, like realizing that adding more lanes to a congested highway doesn't reduce traffic. It just attracts more drivers who previously avoided the route.
Precisely. If Anthropic and Google continue to utilize architectural breakthroughs like internalized red teaming to make these AI models cheaper, faster, and more efficient, the enterprise adoption will only accelerate.
Right. The token maxing scripts will only increase in volume.
Exactly. So if the Jevons paradox holds true, and AI becomes so cheap and efficient that we use exponentially more of it, what happens when the ultimate limiting factor on human innovation is no longer money or code, but the raw physical limits of the Earth's water and power?
The fault line. All that virtual pressure grinding continuously against the physical bedrock. It's going to be fascinating to see what snaps next.
That concludes our forensic briefing for May 29th, 2026. The strategic signal for today is the danger of Goodhart's law in the compute era. When a metric becomes a target, it ceases to be a good metric. Amazon's canceled leaderboard and the multi-million-dollar uncapped corporate token bills prove that corporate America is currently blind spending on compute. Engineers are token maxing, running endless autonomous agent loops simply to appear productive or to game internal corporate dashboards. As enterprise AI spending shows up as a massive operational expense on next quarter earnings reports, Wall Street is going to start asking tough questions about actual ROI. High performers must move past vanity usage metrics and tie agentic deployment directly to baseline business revenue. If you want to own your infrastructure instead of being managed by it, check the show notes for the AI Executive Toolkit. And as a special bonus for our community, we have exclusive discount codes for Google Workspace and My AI and Machine Learning Tutor Pro apps. You can find the links to claim those directly in the show notes below. Subscribe to the DJAMGAMIND channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. I am Anna. Stay sharp and keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads. We build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.